we are back with another solo episode. I really appreciate everyone who reached out, sent me a message on LinkedIn, through email, or through Substack after the first one dropped. I guess I have some mixed feelings about the amount of people who are resonating with my story. You know, in one way, it's nice to be sharing openly and honestly and having so many people relate to it. And then, on the other hand, it shows the state of our relationship to work and to stress and how many people are really, really going through it. So appreciate you being here. Appreciate you rocking with me on this journey. I guess we'll start with a little life update. So I've officially made it to the first leg of my journey after a long 30-hour adventure, stopping off in Hong Kong for a 10-hour layover. I did have some delicious dim sum. If you ever make it to Hong Kong, there is a place called Tim Ho Wan that's actually in a train station. Its claim to fame is being the cheapest Michelin restaurant in the world. It's super good. It's literally in a train station, and there's a huge line, but well worth the wait. Then took a tram up to the peak for some beautiful city and mountain views before finally landing in Bali, taking a short drive to Uluwatu, where I'm staying at least for the next week. Super beautiful here. On day 4 currently, starting to settle into a bit of a nice routine. Spent the first day at Uluwatu Beach, which was gorgeous. And this first leg for me is really about getting my body really healthy again. We'll worry about the mind and soul in a little bit, but I want to just get physically healthy again because I did quite a bit of damage to my body. So I found a great gym with a sauna, ice bath, recovery space. And so I've been hitting that pretty hard this morning and every morning, and then playing paddle in the afternoon, which has quickly become my newest obsession. And if you hang out long enough and listen to this podcast, you'll learn pretty quickly that I get obsessed with things. So that's my newest one. I grew up playing a lot of tennis with my mom and my dad and my brother. And so, it's my first time playing, but I think I'm starting from a pretty good base. And so picking it up quickly, and it's cool. It's kind of like, it's much more 3D than tennis. I can feel like myself using different synapses. You can bounce it off the back wall, and it's pretty cool, and kind of a cerebral game as well as a physical one. And I've been trying to get up early, finding joy in my mornings again. I used to kind of dread waking up. Now I've been getting up at about 7 a.m., doing some reading. Currently reading the book by Alan Watts for the second time. We'll get into that a little bit later in this podcast. I've been doing a little bit of journaling every day, some breath work, some light movement, and a quick plunge in the pool, and a shower up and get ready for the day. There is a beautiful coffee shop just 2 minutes down the road with healthy smoothies and bowls and really good coffee. So I've been posting up there. I posted up this morning, did a little bit of writing. But certainly remembering how important mornings are for me. And I think for all of us, really, when you go to bed thinking of a task and then you wake up thinking about a task, for me, it's always been really hard not to just immediately jump into that thing right away. And then I find, you're immediately on the back foot. You go into this state of reacting to life versus acting on it intentionally. When you create space to think and check in and connect with yourself, I feel like, for me, my day goes way, way better. And certainly I'm not perfect. And I've already got sucked into wanting to harness the morning productivity bump that I naturally get in the morning. But I am trying to make my morning routine somewhat of a sacred space, a non-negotiable. And I think we'll get there over time. And yeah, milestones. I mean, yesterday was a big step in my recovery journey. I actually hit 90 days sober yesterday, which is pretty cool. I haven't talked too much about my relationship with addiction and alcohol, but I'll get more comfortable talking about that over time. I certainly feel a lot more clear. I feel a lot more like myself, but it's still challenging. And it's funny, you can see how your addictions kind of flip into other things. I can see my caffeine consumption has already gone up quite a bit since being here as I kind of look to fill the gap that alcohol has left. It's definitely a really big part of my social life for a very long time. Really since I was, I guess, like 13, which is kind of crazy. It was also something that I used as a distraction tool to numb myself in my downtime, to kind of quiet the brain. So I've been on Instagram or Reels way more often than normal, which is insane because I'm in paradise. Everything I could possibly want is right outside my door. But, taking it day by day, keeping my eye on both caffeine and social media, my intake on those. And I think, awareness is the biggest thing. So we'll scale those back as we go. And, I'm also learning through conversations I've been having, both when I hit record and offline. I've had lots of people reach out to me and just chat about really incredible and hard things that they're going through. And yeah, this vice, particularly alcohol, tightens its grip on a lot of high-performing people as they look for ways to escape their intense reality and the intense expectations that they put on themselves. So if you are questioning your own relationship with alcohol, know that you're far from being alone there. And whether it's become a big problem or you're just curious about what life would be like without it, there are a lot of great resources out there. Maybe I'll throw some in my show notes. But one of the things quickly I'll touch on that's kind of stuck with me is this idea that whether it's addiction, alcoholism, is a progressive disease. So if it does become an issue for you, it's not going to naturally fix itself. And if not checked, it will progressively and sometimes slowly get worse and worse over time and just slowly start sucking more and more of your life away in a progressive fashion. But we'll get more into that in the future. I don't feel like I'm ready to dive headfirst into that today, but one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about was the book I've been reading. And this is my second time reading the book by Alan Watts. And you'll probably have noticed maybe already that I'm a pretty big Alan Watts fan. Read a lot of his stuff. And I don't know about you guys, but for quite some time, I've had a pretty, call it transactional relationship with reading. I love reading, but somewhere along the way, like many things in my life, I stopped enjoying the actual process of reading. And I read to extract as much knowledge from the book as I could, as quickly as I could. And if I'm being honest, I started reading a book to finish it as quickly as I could while trying to absorb as much as I can. So lots of context and nuance, I think, is lost when you're reading in that way. And I've been intentionally going through it this time much slower, kind of reading a chapter at a time and then reflecting on it. In the book, Alan challenges this modern idea of the self as this separate, isolated ego that's just trapped in a bag of bones and skin. And he kind of argues that none of us are separate beings. You are the universe experiencing itself, and that this illusion of separateness is really the root of most of human suffering. And it's just really resonated with me. Like, these are not overly new concepts, but, you know, he puts it in this way that just kind of makes sense to me. And he talks about from, you know, childhood, we're sort of conditioned to see ourselves as isolated beings being moved through a world of kind of other objects, and that this narrative builds a persistent but false sense of division. It's me versus you. It's human versus nature. It's life versus death. But he talks through that is an illusion. And in truth, you are not in the universe. You are the universe. And he talks about life as sort of this game of hide and seek. I think he calls it the divine play. And it sort of manifests as individual forms. You, me, nature, trees, animals, temporarily forgetting kind of that unity, just to rediscover it through the adventure of living. And there's no final purpose, no cosmic, to-do list. The point is just to play. And instead of life being a problem to be solved, it's more of a dance to be enjoyed. And, he goes on to talk about how this is kind of taboo, this idea of remembering or knowing who you are. Because if we did that, a lot of society, religious and institutions kind of depend on this illusion of separateness to, maintain control. And if people truly saw themselves as inseparable from the world, some fundamental things like fear of death would dissolve. Greed and competition and capitalism would lose their footing a little bit, lose some of their power, and obedience to external authority would start to crumble down a little bit. And some of the core takeaways, I guess, are, this fear, this seeking, this grasping, which I've talked a lot about, which is a lot of where my suffering came from. He says it all comes from forgetting who you already are. And that death is not the end. It is a rhythm in the ongoing song of existence. And then, really hammering home that life is not a problem to solve. Felt like it was to me. But it's a dance. It's a play. It's kind of a cosmic unfolding. And the fact that you are not separate. You are the universe, playing, expressing, exploring itself through you. Your job is really just to remember that. And early on in the book, he highlights the absurdity of human life in kind of this funny metaphor and story about tubes, which I reread a bunch of times, and I thought I'd share it with you. He goes, "For there is a growing apprehension that existence is a rat race in a trap. Living organisms, including people, are merely tubes which put things in at one end and let them out at the other, which both keeps them doing it and in the long run wears them out. So to keep the farce going, the tubes find ways of making new tubes, which also put things in at one end and let them out at the other. At the input end, they even develop ganglia of nerves called brains, with eyes and ears, so that they can more easily scrounge around for things to swallow. As and when they get enough to eat, they use up their surplus energy by wiggling in complicated patterns, making all sorts of noises by blowing air in and out of the input hole, and gathering together in groups to fight with other groups. In time, the tubes grow such an abundance of attached appliances that they are hardly recognizable as mere tubes. And they manage to do this in a staggering variety of forms. There is a vague rule not to eat tubes of your own form, but in general, there's a serious competition as to who's going to be the top type of tube. All this seems marvelously futile, and yet when you begin to think about it, it begins to be more marvelous than futile. Indeed, it seems extremely odd. And this marvelous and futile game does not seem so futile when you're in it. I know it didn't for me. Really felt like the opposite of futile. And for quite some time, the competition of trying to be the top type of tube dominated really my entire existence. It felt like it was the only game worth playing, kind of the only game, and one that was worth sacrificing everything else for. The whole point is to be the top type of tube. That's what I thought. The best way I can sort of describe this feeling, and I've tried to share this with a few people in my life, is every single day felt like the most important day of my life. And that is a really strange way to live your life. It's a really heavy way to live your life. That's filled with a lot of anxiety. Every day was another really important business trip, meeting founders, hosting investors. Every day had Zoom calls where millions of dollars might change hands. Every little minute decision had a huge impact on a lot of people around me. So imagine waking up and thinking, today is the biggest day of my life. Through that lens, nothing else really matters. It doesn't matter how you're feeling mentally or physically. It doesn't matter how much sleep you're getting. It doesn't matter if you ignore things or people in your personal life, because this is it. This is the day. This is when it's all happening. And if you nail this day, then you're set. But then repeat that feeling every day for about 1,500 plus days straight. That obscures your worldview and makes it very myopic and self-serving. And I still wake up, even over here in paradise, with that feeling of something really important that I have to do, something that I have to nail, something that has to go perfect. But, with some space, I'm hoping that voice gets quieter and quieter, because it is just an illusion, and also a little comical to look back at. I was not a surgeon, I was not saving lives, and that crushing pressure that I felt was just all bullshit, and just a story that I had created for myself, a story that sort of justified my existence, my actions, and I guess my chosen suffering. So I'm trying to reframe that feeling. And what if, instead of thinking this is the most important day of my life, I switch that to, what if this was the last day of my life? Would I spend it chasing a goal that I'll never realize? Or would I spend it trying to notice every beautiful little thing around me and experience as much richness as I can, connect as deeply as I can, express as much gratitude for the people I love as I can? Like everything, there's so much duality in life, and we often have to hold two things to be true at the same time. And one is that the only constant is change, and that every moment is fleeting. And then on the other side of that is there is only ever an eternal now. We can and will only ever experience the current moment. So how you feel right now as you're listening to this podcast is the best reflection of how your life really is and how you're feeling about it. So one could argue that today is the most important day of your life, but not because you're going to accomplish some things that set you up to be happy in some future that doesn't exist. No, it's the most important day of your life because this is it. There will only ever be a series of endless present moments. And if you miss it, you can't get it back. So maybe your job is not to create, build, accomplish as much as you can and to show people how endlessly clever you are. It's instead to notice and breathe in as much of the moment that's in front of you as possible. And I thought I'd maybe wrap this up by sharing a poem that my grandfather carried with him in his wallet his whole life. And when he passed, my mom passed it on to my brother and I, and it's right in the same vein. He was a smart guy. It says, "There are 2 days in every week about which it is useless to worry. One is yesterday, with its mistakes and blunders. The other is tomorrow. It, too, is beyond our control. Tomorrow's sun will rise, either in splendor or behind a mask of clouds, but it will rise. That leaves today, and usually our present trials are easier to bear than remorse for what happened yesterday or dread of what tomorrow may bring. Let us therefore journey one day at a time." A smart guy, wise guy, and going to try and live by those words more, carry that with me now. But I think I'm going to leave it there for now. There's an important day in front of me that I need to go be present for. And thank you again for being here. I'll see you all next week.